On the morning of Thursday, February 13th, 2025, in the Sheraden neighborhood of Pittsburgh, a local resident observed a 26-year-old woman believed to be Taylor Hall, also known by the nickname Pretty Flay, approaching an apartment building located on the 3100 block of Kelvin Street. Witnesses noted that Taylor appeared focused and purposeful as she made her way toward the apartment. Shortly afterward, the sound of gunshots rang out from inside the building. At approximately 8:20 a.m., multiple emergency calls were placed to Pittsburgh's 911 dispatch center, reporting gunfire coming from the same apartment Taylor had just entered. Dispatcher logs listed the address as 3167 Kelvin Street, situated between Petway Street and Jette Street. Emergency responders were immediately dispatched, with police, fire crews, and medical personnel rushing toward the location. Before officers arrived, Taylor was seen exiting the apartment building with a gunshot wound. Despite being critically injured, she did not wait for emergency responders to reach her. Instead, she entered a black SUV in an attempt to drive herself to the hospital. Witnesses observed the vehicle leaving Kelvin Street in an erratic manner that immediately drew attention. Taylor managed to drive approximately 2 blocks away from the apartment where she had been shot. Her apparent destination was Chartier Avenue, a major roadway where she likely believed she could either find assistance or reach medical care more quickly. The route she took led through residential streets that were growing busier as the morning progressed. Other motorists and pedestrians noticed the vehicle's unusual movement, unaware they were witnessing her final attempt to survive. When Taylor reached the intersection of Chartier Avenue and Sutherland Street, her strength failed. Her vehicle collided with a utility pole, abruptly ending her desperate effort to seek help. The crash occurred just as she was nearing the busier roadway where assistance might have been more readily available. Emergency responders who had originally been dispatched to the shooting scene on Kelvin Street were suddenly faced with a second emergency location. Police officers who had been racing to investigate reports of a shooting instead encountered a vehicle crash involving an injured driver. Firefighters arrived at the crash site within minutes and immediately began CPR, initially unaware that the injured driver was also a victim of gun violence. Paramedics worked quickly to stabilize Taylor at the scene. However, without knowing the full circumstances of her injuries at that time, they transported her to the nearest hospital. At the hospital, doctors fought to save her life. Sadly, at 8:44 a.m., Taylor succumbed to her injuries and was pronounced dead. The Allegheny County Medical Examiner's Office later conducted a full autopsy and officially ruled her death a homicide, confirming that the fatal gunshot wound had been sustained before the vehicle crash. News of Taylor's death spread rapidly throughout the Sheraden community, shared through social media posts and phone calls among neighbors and friends. Investigators were confronted with the complex task of processing 2 interconnected crime scenes, the apartment on Kelvin Street where the shooting occurred, and the crash site where her vehicle came to a stop. Inside the apartment on Kelvin Street, detectives found disturbed furniture and other signs indicating that the violence had not occurred without resistance. To determine the precise sequence of events leading to Taylor being shot, investigators collected extensive physical evidence, including shell casings and blood spatter, documented bullet trajectories, and processed surfaces for fingerprints and DNA. These findings suggested that a physical altercation had taken place prior to the shooting. At the crash site, forensic specialists examined Taylor's black SUV for additional evidence. They discovered blood inside the vehicle, confirming that she had been wounded before the crash. Her cell phone was also recovered and became a critical piece of evidence, as it contained her final communications, location data, and potentially information about who she had been in contact with that morning. Digital forensic teams began the meticulous process of extracting data from Taylor's social media accounts, text messages, and call logs. A 6:18 a.m. Facebook post became a central focus of the investigation. Investigators also reviewed her private messages and recent communication patterns to better understand the events that led to the fatal confrontation. Residents of the area cooperated with police canvassing efforts, providing information about vehicles and individuals seen in the neighborhood that morning. As February turned into March and then April, no arrests were made. Police in Pittsburgh police continued releasing standard statements about the investigation remaining active, but no major developments were announced publicly. This lack of progress raised concerns among Taylor's family and friends. As time passed, it became apparent that investigators were unable to build a prosecutable case, despite having gathered substantial evidence. The case required more than physical proof. It demanded establishing motive, opportunity, and a coherent narrative that could stand up in court. Taylor's family organized community meetings, not to criticize law enforcement, but to keep public attention on the case. They believed that sustained awareness might encourage someone with additional information to come forward. However, the lack of visible progress frustrated some community members, who questioned why no arrests had been made, despite what appeared to be significant evidence. As months went by without arrests, alternative theories began circulating within the community. Some people questioned whether the investigation was being handled with sufficient urgency, while others speculated that unseen factors might be slowing progress. Questions also emerged about why certain details remained sealed from public view. The identity of the apartment's occupant, the specific contents of Taylor's final text messages, and the results of ballistics testing were not disclosed. Although investigators typically keep such information confidential to protect the integrity of an active case, this lack of transparency fueled further speculation. Taylor was a single mother of 2 children in Pittsburgh. She was known as a devoted parent who never allowed her ambitions to outweigh her role as her children's protector and provider. She was also an entrepreneur, having built 3 separate income-generating businesses. In 2023, she launched Scented Dreams, an all-organic product line that included sugar scrubs, bath bombs, and handmade soaps. Taylor had an on-and-off relationship with the father of her youngest child. At times, their relationship was described by friends as intense and passionate, but it was also marked by severe arguments. On some occasions, his close friends became concerned enough to call Taylor in the middle of the night. Suspicions of infidelity fueled a cycle of breakups and reconciliations that had been ongoing since early 2024. Taylor would remove his photos from her social media accounts, only for them to reappear weeks later when they reconciled. Over time, the abuse escalated, and by early 2025, Taylor had decided to end the relationship. She refused to tolerate behaviors that undermined her goals. Taylor began setting clearer boundaries, becoming more selective about how and when she engaged with her boyfriend, and demanding greater respect and healthier communication. Tragically, what she did not realize was that establishing these boundaries would set off a chain of events that would ultimately lead to her death. On the morning of her murder, at 6:18 a.m., Taylor posted on Facebook about her personal struggles and frustrations within her relationship. Before being fatally shot, she had written publicly about the abuse and emotional pain she experienced at the hands of her boyfriend. In the days leading up to her death, friends noticed that she frequently posted messages about self-respect, independence, and refusing to tolerate mistreatment. Her phone records from that night may reveal what triggered the final confrontation, but investigators have kept those details confidential as part of the ongoing investigation. As of now, local authorities have not announced any arrests or publicly identified any suspects in connection with her death. At the time of the most recent reporting, police stated that the investigation was ongoing and that no additional information regarding motives or suspects had been released. May her soul rest in peace, and may she one day receive the justice she deserves.